Hey there, everyone. Okay, so the next question is there a list of texts every student needs to know? Fabulous question. Like most things, people fall on both ends of a spectrum on this one. There are kind of classicists who would say, yes, there are certain texts that everybody should read because we kind of need that mutual understanding for kind of background knowledge. And then there are people on the opposite side of the spectrum who would say nobody ever has to read the same text. As long as they're reading, that's good. In most cases, fall somewhere in the middle. So what I really believe is that it's really important to have a shared text or a few shared texts that we as a class read together. But I actually believe that's important, not so much so that we all have the same kind of content background, but that we are together learning how to read a text. So that might mean and honestly, we probably read 2 full-length texts. So that would be a full-length play, a full-length epic poem, a novel, together per semester. And then we might do some short stories or poetry together, certainly. But then a lot of times there's choice embedded within kind of the construct. So we might read something together, but then I really want to see how they can apply it on their own in another piece. So one of the things for us to think about as we think about this question, does everybody need to read the same text? I think it really comes down to, in a lot of ways, how we identify with ourselves as English teachers. And a lot of us, I think, have traditionally identified ourselves as kind of literature teachers. I know that's certainly in a lot of ways how I started, but I definitely now see myself as a literacy teacher, as a person whose job it is to help kids become autonomous readers and writers and speakers and listeners and thinkers. And I can't do that if I am just so intensely going from huge text to huge text, like from novel to novel to novel, that I never really release it to them. So I think that part is important. I think actually another facet of this question that becomes important is actually kind of talking about the students in front of us. So when we think about kind of a traditional canon of texts, a lot of those texts are written by dead white men. And I really think about texts as having both windows and mirrors. So we definitely need texts that are window texts, right? So texts that allow our readers to see, look back in history, to see another culture, to see another time, to look to the future, right? All of those things become important. But it's also really important, I think, for us to have mirror texts, which means that we are making a really concerted effort to take a look at the students who are in front of us and making sure that the authors that they are reading also look like them and talk like them sometimes. And so when we think about all of the kinds of diversity that we have in our classrooms, racial diversity, ethnic diversity, religious diversity, gender identity diversity, I think it's really important for us to make sure that if our few, big shared texts are from that canon, from that kind of traditional canon, that we're really working hard to make sure that we are supplementing with poems and short stories and plays and, all kinds of things where students really see themselves reflected in complex literature. So we also have to realize that just because, a piece of work isn't from the classic canon doesn't make it any less complex, right? So reading Sula or The Bluest Eye is just as complex as reading, some pieces of British lit. So I think that that's also a big component of this question about whether or not there is a list of texts that every student should read. I'll just also say this one other thing. I know I'm getting a little wordy here, but Even AP, which I know sometimes like all roads lead to AP, right? We kind of look at that curriculum. So even AP says that what's most important for students is to have a range of experiences with texts. So what that means for me is when I look at the offerings, like the different pieces that we'll read over a course or over a semester, I am looking to see, not only am I having some of those mirror texts in there, right, to kind of represent the students in front of me, but am I also including different time periods? Am I including plays and short stories and poetry so that students have that skill set to interact with a variety of texts? And I know it's hard. I know this is a really hard thing because in order to kind of supplement in these ways, it means that there's stuff we have to give up. And I would say, like, content wise, I probably cut the content in half when I made this decision to really stop from going novel to novel to novel to novel to really thinking about creating these experiences for kids where they are interacting with all kinds of texts and constantly having to go back and work on these reading and writing and speaking and listening skills in different iterations over and over again. So I know it's complex. I know there are no easy answers, but hopefully that at least generates some discussion for you.